Hi everybody and welcome to the video, welcome to the channel. In this one we're tuning 3 cars for the S-Class Open Series. Now, starting off with car number 1, we've got the 97 Porsche 911 GC1 Strassenversion. The second car is the Ferrari Enzo, the 2002, absolute monster. And lastly, it's the 2016 BMW M4 GTS. I wanted something a bit more acceleration-wise, something a bit more grippy, and something a bit more all-round. So, let's hop into the Porsche. So, heading into performance, we've got nothing on fuel and air. Engine, again, is completely stock. Platform and handling, completely stock. We've got a sports tyre compound. I have these alloys on, the Tenzo R DC-6 V1s, or whichever ones are in similar weight. Race transmission, race differential, a rear wing and a front bumper, all on race, and no conversions. So with that done, let's get into the tuning element side of the car. So tyre pressures, 33.0 psi front and rear. The gearing, I've gone for a final ratio of 4.12. These are the other ratios here. Feel free to play with these if you want a bit more speed, a bit more acceleration, etc. Alignment, negative 1.5 on the front and negative 1.1 on the rear. Anti-roll bars, I've gone for 16.04 and 14.66 on the rear. You could probably run this stiffer if you wish, but I felt that this worked for me. I was able to point it into the corners, hit every single apex, every single time. And for me, that's the most important thing in a tune. Spring stiffness, I've gone for 609 on the front and 667.1 on the rear. The ride height, I've gone for 3.5 front and 3.5 rear. This increase in ride height is just going to help with those curbs. It just means you can be slightly more aggressive when attacking those corners. Damping, 3.3 front and 3.3 on the rear. The rebound stiffness is 9.8 on the front and 10.0 on the rear. The roll center height, car being such a light car, it doesn't really need too much adjustment in this element. So I've gone for 0 front and 0 rear. The anti-dive is minus 4.1, just aids with that getting that weight over the front end. And the anti-squat is minus 7.4 because it does like to step out on throttle. So if it feels a bit too twitchy coming out of corners, just knock this down a bit and it should aid in that oversteer coming out of corners. Downforce maxed out because this is the grip build, so 196 pounds on the front and 352 on the rear. Braking balance, braking force, the balance is on 50% and the braking pressure is at 150. Again, feel free to play with these are your numbers pretty much, doesn't make too much of a difference. Acceleration differential is on 100 and the deceleration is on 0. Right, car number 2, the 2002 Ferrari Enzo. Let's hop into this. So, starting off with performance, we have a race air filter. We also have this restrictor plate on. So not the stock one. We've restricted the airflow. Engine, completely stock. Platform and handling, we do have the race weight reduction. The max front tyre width. So with wheels, I've gone for the ADV06 track specs. Drivetrain, the transmission is on race. Front and rear race aerodynamics. And absolutely nothing in conversion. So that should bang you up to S800. Let's get into the tuning. So tyre pressures are 31.0 front and 31.0 on the rear. These are the gear ratios that I settled with in the end. 4.45 final drive. And then these are all of the other ratios. Alignment, negative 1.6 degree of camber on the front, negative 1.1 on the rear. Toe is 0, and the front caster is 5.4. Anti-roll bars, 20.02 on the front and 23.07 on the rear. Worked well for me. Not too twitchy going into corners, not too stable either. Give me that fine balance. Springs, the stiffness on the front, 630.2, 780.0 on the rear. Again, I have bumped up the ride height because I've been doing a bit of tuning on Spa, trying to get cars to handle Eau Rouge. Without going ultra stiff, you do have to adjust the ride height. So I've gone for 4.4, but feel free to lower that if you wish. But try and keep the numbers the same, just so it doesn't off-balance that weight distribution. Bump stiffness, 3.6 on the front, 3.8 on the rear, and rebound stiffness, 10.0 on the front and 10.5 on the rear. Roll center height, the front's at 0.4 and the rear is slightly stiffer at 0.8. No anti-dive and no anti-squat. If you do feel like the car does squat a bit too much coming out of corners, especially slow ones, bang that up a bit, maybe up to about 15-20%, and it should aid in that. But this worked well for me. I'm quite aggressive on the throttles. So for aerodynamics, the front is 238 pounds and the rear is 393 pounds. Braking balance looks quite familiar, I know. 50% balance and 150% brake pressure. Acceleration 100% and deceleration is at 8%. So that's the Ferrari Enzo build. Let's get into the last car of the video. So last but not least, the BMW M4 GTS. This car, out of these two, is probably my favourite because of just how difficult this car is to use. It shreds tyres. Just be careful. If you do use this car and build it, it does shred tyres. So if you're still here, let's hop in. Fuel and air. We've got a race exhaust and a race fuel system. We have a street flywheel, race camshafts, and sport valves. Front anti-roll bar race, rear anti-roll bar race. It already has race spring and dampers and a race weight reduction. Tyres, I've maxed out the rear tyre width at 315mm and race tyre compound itself. Alloys, I've gone for the Speedlines, so it's not the lightest, I think it's the second lightest. So Speedline 2014s, race transmission and a race differential and a race clutch. Aero, it already does have front and rear race. Nothing's been touched on here. And absolutely nothing in conversions. So, and now the tune for this car, 29.0 psi front, 29.0 psi on the rear. Gearing, I've gone for an extra long gear ratio here. So I've gone for 2.85 final drive. And it just plows through these gears. You're only going to need 5th gear. It's not going to go over 209 mile an hour. It's simple as that. But this increase in length in gearing aids with that traction coming out of corners. Alignment negative 1.5 front, negative 1.0 on the rear. Toe 0.0 and the front caster is 5.5. Anti-roll bars 20.02 on the front and 1 on the rear. Again, just aids with that traction coming out of corners. Springs 583.8 front and 546.8 on the rear. The ride height, just to balance out the weight distribution a bit better, I've increased the front to 5.8 and the rear is at 5.82. Bump stiffness 4.9 front and 4.6 on the rear. The rebound stiffness 12.1 on the front and 11.1 on the rear. Roll center height offset, this car does wail quite a bit. So the roll center height has been increased to 3.5 and the rear has increased to 4.3. Anti-dive is 6.1 and the anti-squat is minus 25.8. Again, this will aid with the traction. Accompanied by the 4.3 rear roll center height offset, the extremely soft rear springs will aid in that traction. You'll still have that corner rotation, but it does give you that traction exiting the corners. Maxed out downforce, 97 pounds on the front and 185 on the rear. Aerodynamics, the front's 97 and the rear's 185. Braking balance, you guessed it, 50% and the brake pressure's 150. The differential, the acceleration is on 40% and the deceleration is on 0. So that's the end of the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. These cars were fun to drive and fun to use. And I'm not going to lie, that Porsche is a joke. But please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know which car was your favourite. And as always, stay tuned for more.